Yes, I was a bit surprised because I thought that by now people should know the legal age of marriage in this country. I mean, it is even such that even at 18, if you want to marry, you need the consent of your parents. The law is that protective. It's only at 21 that actually you can go ahead and marry without the consent of parents. So I was a bit surprised. I thought we should know. On the other hand, having worked in this area for a long time, sometimes it doesn't surprise me too much because in this country we still have many issues that have to do with children, children as boys and girls, and children as girls, okay, that have not been resolved despite the laws that we have in the land. So you have this mixed thing going on at the same time. And I'm sure it probably is even going on in other places if we are not careful enough to start looking out for some of these things. So yes, that's what I felt.
So, and I know Diana will speak on her professional capacity as the Attorney General's department and how they think, which we already have, a glimpse into what they are thinking. But it's important to know how you also felt when you heard the news before you began to gather your facts and to eventually issue a statement.
Thank you very much, Samson. I believe my feelings are no different from what Sheila and Angela have expressed. Worry also, because as Angela indicated, you would think that in this year of 2024, proceeding on the allegation, and I keep saying that it hasn't yet been proven, but assuming it's proven, there's a sense of worry that in 2024, people would be either oblivious or ignorant of generally human rights and particularly children's rights. But I must put on record that the public outcry also gave me some sense of happiness, because the public outcry is a demonstration for me of the substantial understanding of the general public of fundamental human rights, particularly children's rights. The converse is also true, because then it indicates that in 2024, we're still having some of these worrying cultural practices existent. So I was happy that at least Ghanaians are alert to human rights generally. They can at least sense a possible infraction of the laws on human rights, particularly on children's rights. Of course, social media has also contributed to this. So I'm glad that some progress, at least if we look at it historically, has been made in the sensitization. But it also tells us there is more room for improvement. Thank you.
And despite that, when you issued your statement, you also sought to educate by quoting the law.
That's correct.
To help people to appreciate it.
That's correct.
Why was it that important to refer people to what the law says?
Right. It became important because in the midst of the public outcry, there were some seeming justifications for cultural practices. And I like to point out, so there was an intersection between cultural rights and children's rights. And so it was imperative on our part to point out that assuming the facts are proven, there is clearly a breach of children's rights, and without prejudice to our cultural rights. And so it was important, of course, by our constitution, it is imperative that where there is an offense, it must be clearly spelled out, and the punishment for same is also equally spelled out. And that is why our letter indicated, first of all, the provision, the law, and what is possibly the infraction of that particular law, and also accompanied it with the sanctions for breach of that law.
And Diana Sulaba Dapaah, Deputy Attorney General and Deputy Minister for Justice, the Plan International, they are one of those who issue statements. And in their statement, they said, Plan Ghana, they said, it is imperative that the government of Ghana upholds its obligation to protect the rights of all individuals and take concrete actions to eliminate harmful practices such as child early and forced marriages. Would you say that so far you are taking steps that gives Ghanaians this assurance?
Right, I believe so. I think yesterday the Ministry of Information came out with some release. But before I go that, Sam, you made a very good distinction between cultural practices and customary law.
Okay.
Now, if you look at Article 26, it gives the right to practice your culture. But then it is one of the articles that has a caveat, which is that the customary practices which are dehumanizing or injurious to our physical. So just to bring it out that absolute statement that culture is part of our laws is not necessarily right. There is a caveat, and people should not, close their eye to that particular caveat. Now, on the issue of the step the government is taking, and it's in sync with the welfare principle that is established under Section 12 of Act 560. Indeed, when the whole incident was reported and the euphoria, there was an interministerial committee that was set up, made up of the Ministry of Interior, the Chieftaincy Ministry, the Gender Ministry, and of course the Office of the Attorney General and Ministry of Justice was there to give the necessary advice. We believed, and this is what we acted on, that in the midst of all the euphoria, it was the best interest of the child that was important. Right. In as much as people were agitating for prosecution, I think the focus was too much on the offense that had been allegedly committed than on the interest and welfare of the child. And so in accordance with what we believe should be the priority, which is the child, the Ministry of Gender and of course the Ghana Police Service immediately took the child and the relative to a place of safety. As the press release from the Ministry of Information indicated, the child is currently going through the necessary social welfare recommended protocols. There are two caregivers. There's a medical doctor that are taking the child through the necessary protocols. There's a case worker on standby to ensure that all the protocols regarding the welfare of the child and the best interest of the child are clearly adhered to. Of course, concurrently, then police are also doing their investigation. And that's what the statement indicated, that the Ghana Police Service has taken statements from the Wolomo. They've also taken statements from the parents of the child. And so my admonition to all of us is, I think there was too much concentration on the crime itself. It is good. As I've indicated, I have been happy about the sense of alertness of Ghanaians and the general public on human rights and children's rights. But I think we should equally bring to the fore a discussion on the best interest of the children. And the Office of the AG is consistently in touch with the Gender Ministry to ensure that the interest of the children is done. So there are currently medical issues that she's going through, psychological treatment that she's going through, and of course all the determination and assessment of the age, etc. are going through. We are on top of this matter, I can assure you, and hopefully next week I think we should be making some progress beyond what you've already.
Now, it is a fact that she's not 12. What we are not too sure about is whether she's 16 or will turn 16 in July. Is that a central part of what your instructions are to the investigators?
Sam, my position is that whether 12, 15 or 16, the law is clear if you look at Section 14. And I've heard discussion. And for me, again, I keep saying that this event is a good opportunity for us as Ghanaians to resensitize ourselves. It is neither here or there whether 12, whether 15 or 16. Of course, I'm mindful of Section 122 of Act 560 on the determination of the age of a child. It is key only for purposes of ensuring that Section 14 has not been breached. And clearly, the arguments that are being thrown out there, whether 12, 15 or 16, still does not meet the age criteria. So if there's any determination of ages as to 18, so that 12, 15, 16, I think is neither here or there. Betrothal marriage, again, respectfully, I have to disagree with my learned, respected senior. It's also neither here or there. I think the Section 14 is clear. And even Section 1, it defines a child within the context of Act 560. It's 18. So whether 12, 15, or 16, and if we are invoking Section 14, why are we discussing even 12, 15, or 16? But of course, as part of the prosecutorial processes on evidence, it is important to determine the age only for purpose of ensuring that the child is 18 or not. But 12, 15, or 16, I'm afraid still doesn't cut it.
It's immaterial.
It's immaterial, yes.
And please give the education back to our audience in a summary. The age is immaterial now for as long as she's not 18 because what? Because
Section 1 and 14 of Act 560, first of all, Section 1 defines a child to be someone who is 18 and above. I mean, who is below 18.
Right.
If you go again to the Section 14, and so I've heard also the arguments that when people look at Section 14 and say that the age of marriage is 18 and say, well, betrothal is not 18. I said, look, you forget, the opening sentence is that no one shall force a child. Mm-hmm. And that determinative interpretation is in Section 1. Mm-hmm. Again, the purpose of Section 2 is only to emphasize the marriage, but it still does not take away. If you are telling me then betrothal is not 18, then what is the age for betrothal? It's not stated, and it's covered under Section 1.
So the emphasis is that you concur with Mercy Labi that below 18, there cannot be betrothal or marriage.
Absolutely
just as
right.
Angela has also emphasized.
Absolutely right.
It cannot happen at all.
It is immaterial. Look at Section 14 carefully. And I always like to say you have to give a purposive interpretation to Act 560. It starts off with Section 1 on who a child is. And the purpose of the Act, if you read the long head, is to protect children, in summary. And so if you are looking at a particular provision that emphasizes that marriage ought to be 18, to say that, well, then betrothal need not be 18, I'm afraid I do not agree with you. Because Section 1 and 14, you have to look at it purposively.
I don't know if I'll put you in an invidious position if I ask you this question, but I must still ask it. In that circumstance, a crime has still occurred.
If proven, if the facts are proven, and it's critical to prove this fact, the age is key. But I've indicated that the age is key not because people are peddling around that she's 12, 15, or 16. The age is key being 18.
The Gadangbe statements, the Mankralo's confirmations, the press conference they all hold, confirm she's not 18. They confirm that she's been betrothed to, some say to the priest, some say to the spirit that the priest serves. So, offense has occasioned, correct?
You know, by my profession, I tend to be slow in stating definitely because the police are still conducting their investigation. Even though we may have read on the news outlets, I believe that we must hasten slowly by allowing the police to go through and give us the dockets with all the evidences. And on the issue of marriage to spirit or deity, Ghana has a very broad human rights framework. And I like to tell people that even if you look at Clause 5 of our Article 33, it is so it's so encompassing. It says that the rights, declarations, and duties that have been mentioned in Chapter 5 does not exclude those that have not been specified.
They are inexhaustive.
Exactly, they are inexhaustive. And if you look at the true intendment of Act 560, there is that understanding. So even if you talk about spiritual marriage, the issue is the welfare principle. Whatever has happened, can we rightfully, reasonably say that it augurs well for the welfare or the best interest of the children?
The very reason I qualified my question to her. Now, tying it in with the safety of the child and people not being particularly sure about how we do things typically in this country, that now there is attention to it and then it will just fizzle out and this child may not even get the proper care going forward. What do you think religious leaders, traditional leaders can do? First, yes, Dinah.
Right, thank you. But Samson, let me just take a minute to react to one thing about the Inter-Ministerial Committee, which I believe Dr. Dramina Boaje has expressed her views on. And I would say that Inter-Ministerial Committee is important for a number of considerations, not to in any way treat this case different, but as she rightly indicated, no two cases are the same. And then she also mentioned that the responsibility of the upbringing of the child it includes the government, and it includes the traditional authorities. And thirdly, we look at the glaring way in which this ceremony, whatever it is called, was carried out. And so for us as government, it was a bit shocking, because the question is, in all the discussion to protect children, to eradicate child marriages, traditional authorities have not been excluded. And also, we cannot, in all respect, I put on record, the office of the Wolomo cannot be underestimated. And so for us, the worry has been that within this discussion of including even traditional authorities, and then we have such a respectable traditional authority being at the forefront of this openly, that is a cause for concern. And of course, that's what the interministerial committee is about. So
people are also concerned that the Constitution requires that the law should be respecter of no one. Exactly. And that we are all equal before the law. It doesn't matter whether you are president or you are not.
Absolutely.
So if it was that carpenter in that corner who was caught in this, he would have been arrested, thrown into police custody, by now may have appeared before a court, would have been remanded in jail. Why is it that there is a difference in treatment?
There's no difference in treatment. And I beg to differ that it is not the case that automatically a person gets remanded for offenses. The police are on top of their job. They have taken statements, they've arrested, taking statements. The investigations are ongoing. It is not the case that once this there's an allegation of this offense, the person will be remanded. Let's not forget the issues of bail, etc. But what I'm saying is that for us, the concern is that we thought we had made some strides, particularly including traditional authorities. And Samson, it will be remiss on our part not to appreciate the peculiarity of this particular case. For the office of the Wolomo, it cannot be denigrated with all respect, and we need to give that due deference without prejudice to the non-discrimination in the application of the law. I have indicated, other than that, the office of the Attorney General would not have issued that letter, and it would have been in the public that proceed with investigation. I believe that what has happened, there are a number of things we need to consider. Yes, prosecution, but as I've indicated, personally and professionally, primarily the interests of the children.
That's right.
And for me, a third angle, which is an education and resensitization, it means that something has gone amiss, particularly when we've included even our traditional authorities, our queen mothers, our chiefs, etc. And in 2024, we are having these reports. And so that is why for us as a government, we need to come back and take stock. So I believe that all these considerations must be looked at.
What's the guarantee, what's the assurance that this child and her mother will not be left in the next few weeks, and then they get into the community, they may be subject of ridicule and attack and so on?
That's the assurance, is to give you the assurance. But thankfully, social media and people like you, I believe Doc just hinted to me that she will be on top of this case. The Office of the Attorney General is also on top of this matter. We intend to do, as I say, a taking of a restocking of our whole understanding, the sensitization that has taken place, and what needs to be done. I believe this case has received so much public scrutiny that it will be risky even for anybody, and we don't intend to.
Are you giving the police any timelines to complete their investigations?
We have, we ask the lawyers to say as soon as possible, but we're looking at in the next week, I believe that there will be significant progress that will further be made, and then the public will be made aware of that.
Thank you so very much, Dan.